welcome to another episode of Doing It for Attention, and I'm joined by Bethany Ayers. That's how I pronounce your surname. Awesome. Now CEO for Metomic, so huge congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Foremost. Great to see. And I'm delighted to bring you on because I met you, which you probably don't remember, a couple of years ago now. What was it, the beginning of 2024? You were a speaker at the customer conference.
Yes, I can't, is that what it's called? Something like that. The customer success conference that they bring over.
Yeah.
From, I can't remember where they're from.
They're the guys that organise it is Israel based, I think, aren't they?
Right.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah. So I bumped into you there because I thought what you were talking about at the time was really interesting and almost a little bit against the collective bubble of customer success. Obviously, it's a CS conference, but they did a really good job of bringing together people from, CEO positions, revenue positions, investors as well. Rav Dalawal was there, who I think you had similar kind of views of the market at the time, which was quite interesting. I think one of his lines was, if you want a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. You need to be able to speak revenue, et cetera, et cetera. And I know you were coming from that angle. Because at the time you were with Peak, weren't you?
I was at Peak. I was a COO, but my background is CRO, so I'm very commercial and I care about the money.
I got that. Yeah, I got that impression. And your journey actually through Peak. So I think you joined, didn't you, as CRO, and then you moved to kind of chief customer, and you had that kind of like organic growth through the business, which was really cool to see.
Yes, and so I was actually at another event where it was all about moving through the C-suite, because I've been a CRO, CCO, COO, and now CEO.
Yeah.
So,
we need to talk about that. So, given that, what would you say has your favourite seat been on board
CEO.
level? CEO, okay.
Definitely.
you have to say that now, given where you are.
No, I definitely don't just have to say it. I've wanted it for a long time.
Yeah.
I put my LinkedIn message announcing the role, and a depressingly large number of people in the comments wrote it's overdue or about time. And I think they're being very supportive, but really each one is just a stab to my soul, to my heart, that, oh God, why is it taking me so long?
Yeah, well, it's here now, so that's awesome. But also amongst that, you are co-host of the Operations Room, so you put out some really great podcast content. If you go through LinkedIn, it's actually quite hard to follow because kind of board member, but Beyond Words is kind of the most recent kind of board member title that you've kind of posted on LinkedIn. But what I'd love to understand, because the purpose of meeting you today really is to talk through your journey to CEO, because I think that's really important. And I don't want to get too caught up on the gender piece, but the odds are stacked against you globally as a female becoming a CEO. Because I think the stats are something like, if you look at the global workforce of females, especially within the technology space, I think board position to count, I'm sure I have some stats somewhere, something like 17% are females. So that's already the odds are kind of against you to get into that position. So it's worth focusing on that, but I don't want to focus too much on it. But I'd love to get your kind of thoughts on that. When you hear that, does that give you an extra feeling of accomplishment?
Well, first of all, Luke, thank you for mentioning it, because it's one of those things where I feel like even on our podcast, I spend a lot of time going, and then the gendered view of this is, or as my experience as a woman is this.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that you brought it up first. It does give me a sense of accomplishment to achieve it. It also makes me sad and pisses me off that that this is the state still.
So I said I wouldn't dive too much into this, but I do want to know your view of why do you think there is a disparity between female leadership within the tech space?
It's just not even within tech space, it's within the world. There's a lot of research and people who are more dedicated to this than I to give you the full answer. Some of it is, all of it is systemic and social. And women still, even if women are the higher earner in the household, they still do somewhere between 20 and 60% more housework than their male partners.
I hope my wife doesn't watch this.
Well, and so therefore it's a lot
You're right.
harder
Yeah.
to fit in and build your career when you're also responsible for running the entire house, regardless of whether or not you're the larger earner.
Yeah.
So that holds women back. An expectation. Well, we also give birth, and so then you look at women. There's another expectation that women are the ones who stay at home, who go part time. I have an incredibly supportive husband, and after we had our first, or when I was pregnant with our first, he said, "You're going to want to go back. Let's do whatever is necessary to get you to go back." And I was like, "You don't know me. I want to be a stay-at-home mom." And he's like, "Okay." And within 6 months, I was climbing the walls and desperate to go back.
Yeah.
Hated every nursery I saw. Was like, "Well, I can't go back with these nurseries." And he said, "Why don't we go for a nanny?" And we ended up with a nanny share. We were both earning a lot less. And so it was a proper sacrifice for us to do.
Yeah.
Meant not going on holidays, meant not living as nice a lifestyle. We had to negotiate with another family. But my husband very much put it as it's the opportunity cost of you not going back to work. And it actually made my career to not take that pause. So I went back full time, had a second child, joined NewVoiceMedia, which was my career making role when I had a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old.
Wow. Okay.
And a nanny. So I made big sacrifices and knowledge of what I wanted it, and I wanted to have a career. There are loads of people who judge me for that. Loads of mothers at the school gates when I would do the occasional drop off who would just be like, "Oh, it's so nice that you have a career. I could never leave my children and go to work. I couldn't have somebody else raise my children, but it's so good that you can." And now that we have kids in secondary school, this was in primary school, we have kids in secondary school, and now those same women are coming to me saying, "You're so lucky you have something to do with your life." Like, the kids are gone, husband's busy, I don't know what to do, I have no point and I have no purpose. You're so lucky. And I was just like, those are the same women who horribly judged me in primary school.
Yeah. It's funny. It's I think that's similar in most walks of life. It's even like I've always been a bit religious with my eating and kind of gym habits. And whenever I joined a new company, like many years ago, I'd take my food in a Tupperware box. I'd have and I know it's a very different example, but I'd always have a lot of kind of negative press around it. And like, why are you doing that? Just have a biscuit, live a little bit, yada, yada, yada. And then probably within a couple of years of establishing myself, staying in good shape, etc., the same people would be like, really struggling, need to get in shape. Like, how do you do it? You're so lucky. It's like, no. This isn't luck. This is process and pain and, restriction, right? And it's definitely not as challenging as going back to work as a full-time mum. But it's my only thing as a man I can relate to. I'm sorry.
But it's around, like, a lot of times people ask me, how have I gotten to where I am in my career? How have I been so successful, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of it is I've worked really hard.
Yeah.
And if you want it, you have to work for it. And it's the same for what you're talking about. Like, if you want to, I don't know if you're lifting weights or running marathons or doing triathlons or what, but if you want to do that well, you have to make choices and you have to work hard.
Yeah. Do you think, based on what you're saying, and please don't take this the wrong way, but do you think women also hold women back from being successful in their careers because of and what I mean is because of the kind of echo chamber of and I'm not saying that's not conditioned by society's expectations, but do you think that then transcends to just those types of conversations where everyone kind of makes people feel like, oh, it's better to stay at home, it's better to do this because that's the conditioning?
I don't think it's just women, but yes,
sure.
Like, there's internalized homophobia, there's internalized racism, and there's internalized misogyny because we live in the society that we live in. So I have definitely, even in my own career, realized that I hold women to a higher standard than I do men.
Yeah.
And it's just because that's what we all have been conditioned, and it's subconscious. Women are just as much slut shamers as men are, and oftentimes more.
Yeah.
Like, we all fit into the same society, and putting other women down so that you look better is like a tactic to survive.
Yeah.
I went to an event, it was Stride VC held an event years ago where they had a woman who knows, who's a historian about the Salem witch trials.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was with a feminist slant on it. But what I hadn't realized is the women who were pointing out the other women who were witches or decrying them as witches, they were, for the most part, young women who were servants in the other woman's house.
Right.
And so the older women had treated the younger women horribly. And so then the younger women said that the older women were witches. And were doing that to get back at the older women, but also doing it because it would raise their social standing if they were the ones who were renouncing the witches.
Wow. That's a really interesting kind of take as well. And I feel a post on LinkedIn coming from that. I don't know how I'm going to spin it, but
yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, it doesn't give men a free ticket or a free pass here, you know.
But, I know.
Yeah, women are.
But I'm always really fascinated because prior to running an agency and being kind of more of an independent recruiter, I've worked internally for businesses where we worked on the gender pay gap. You know, I sat within the HR team for a PLC, and I got to see, it was a very, as you typically expect, very female heavy HR team. And then I kind of slot in, and I was raised, you know, a female only home. So it was me, my sister and my mum effectively, and all of her female friends. So I feel like I kind of, you know, I'm well accustomed to that environment. And I like to think that sitting in that team gave me a fresh perspective, because I like to take a balanced view. You know, I watch lots of podcasts. I follow the likes of Jordan Peterson, where he talks about kind of a very opposing view, and I'd say quite a fictitious view of comparing successful women to having male characteristics and that type of thing. But I think the reality is the stats don't lie, and you know, something needs to happen. So it's always great to speak to people that have kind of gone through that journey and now sat there with, look, actually you can talk about what you think, but this is actually what I've experienced. So it's you know, it's great to see. So I'd love to talk about that, your journey. Like talk me through what did Bethany want to be when she was a young lady? When you were asked at school, what job did you want to do?
So I grew up in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, a la Breaking Bad, and
great series.
But everybody I knew was a doctor, a lawyer, or a nuclear physicist or scientist, right? Everybody worked on base, and everybody was either a civil servant or in the military. So business, finance, none of it made sense to me. Nobody in my family was an entrepreneur. Everybody worked on base. And so I watched Wall Street in whatever, you know, aging myself. I don't know when it came out, 86 or something ridiculous.
Yeah. Great film.
And watched it in the cinema, and I just wanted to be the woman in that. She had her MBA. I don't know if she had a JD MBA or just did a 4-year degree and got her MBA from Harvard. And now she was in finance, and now she was in the suit, and she was the power woman. Yeah. And I was just like, that's what I want to do. Don't know how you do it. Yeah. Don't know what it is, but that's my goal. And that's where I ended up. Except that I ended up in tech rather than finance. Still don't entirely understand what finance is. When I was at uni, it was just during the dot-com boom, and I was desperate to graduate in time before the bubble burst.
Yeah.
I just barely made it in. Then the bubble burst. And then I've just stayed in tech the whole time. And then the other thing is I watched... So TV clearly matters a lot to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, a good job it wasn't Breaking Bad, because this could be a very different career choice. But there's a very powerful woman in there that manages the supply chain.
Yeah. And then I ended up watching an Oprah Winfrey episode once where she was interviewing a woman who had terminal cancer, and it was about her preparing everything for her children, but she was a venture capitalist. And they explained what a VC was. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of it. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. That sounds cool. I want to be in the startup space. So I've ended up as an operator rather than investor, but very much where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so I've been in and around tech. My 20s were not great. I look back at my 20s as just the worst decade of my life.
I'm going to find some historic pictures and just flash them up now.
It's not that way. I can't remember if it was my 25th or my 26th birthday. I think it was my 25th birthday. I spent the entire day in floods of tears because I was now closer to 30 than 20 and I'd accomplished nothing in my life.
That's tragic, isn't it? To think like that.
It was just like nothing was turning out the way I wanted it to, and I was an absolute and utter failure.
Yeah, it's like, I'm old now. That's it.
I'm old, I'm washed up, and I've done nothing. And it was because all through school, I followed the rules. I got good grades. I did the right thing. I went to a good uni. I got good grades. I graduated. And then instead of following the track into American like milk round and the rest, which I should have done had I stayed in America, I moved to the UK. My degree didn't count for anything. I didn't have a network. I didn't get any, and I kind of missed and didn't even realize there were milk rounds. So I just made my 20s really difficult for myself because I didn't follow the well-worn path that I would have followed had I stayed in America. And that just meant that my 20s were wandering around thinking I was better than every job I had, but failing at it, not getting the career progression I was expecting.
A lot of people do that now, don't they?
Yeah,
because influencers tell them it's just career experimentation, which, you know, you're CEO now, so
it worked.
Exactly. It's difficult, isn't it? It's a difficult one to argue.
Well, but also just figuring out what you're good at, what you're not. I was a quota carrier. I did sales. I did marketing. I ran channel. I learned a lot. I was at Computer Center for almost 3 years. So now that I'm back in cyber, it really helps me to understand the channel in a way that I wouldn't have had I just stayed in startups the whole time. So you never know. And then actually it was at Computer Center that I met, she was a boss of mine at the time who was one of my first big champions, Cherry Freeman, and she moved to doing a big strategy project at Mimecast and brought me over.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that launched my career, and it was from my relationships with the people at Mimecast. I got the job at NewVoiceMedia, and that was the start of it. And so one of my big lessons, one is you need to work hard, and the second is you need proper champions. You don't just need mentors. You need people who will open doors for you.
Yeah.
And that's how your career is made. And if I look back on it, it's Rory opening a door for me is how I've become CEO. So, and it's, for me, it's not about how many people you know, but the depth of relationship and the trust that you have with certain people who can do that for you.
Yeah, it's quality over volume of people.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And it works the same in recruitment. We obviously do a lot of outbound activity. We email, we cold call. But most of the relationships we build where they're really strong and sticky come from, you know, meeting people through others. And even like events, you know, that type of stuff. But when you've got a champion at the event, you know, a client of yours is there to say, oh, you should speak to Luke because they did a really good job for us on this. And they're the types of clients we still have today, and they're constantly opening doors for us. But I have to remind myself, and I'm sure you do as well, you've opened that door yourself because of the work that you've done, not because they've opened it for you, because they wouldn't do it if they didn't think you were great.
You need a combination of both. You need to be capable and good and contributing, but you also need people to help you and luck. Yeah. There are a lot of people I know who are very talented whose careers haven't taken off the way mine has, and they luck and knowing the right people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will struggle with the concept of luck, right? Because it feels really unfair. But I would say you know, breaks can happen overnight, but typically they don't. And I think a lot of people get disheartened, right? They're pushing, and they're probably really close to something, and then they stop. And then that person that puts a little bit more in, and again goes back to your notion and you know, quite right, you know, work hard. that's where the results come. But yeah, I agree. I have seen people who are very good executors and they just haven't quite got to, the same level.
But then also there's like some pieces of just fundamental luck. Like I was born as an American, you were born in the UK.
Yeah.
We had stability in our lives. Like maybe not all. Like I had a crazy mother, so I didn't have all the stability, but I wasn't in a war-torn country.
Yeah. There's levels, right? And I agree.
Yeah. We're both white.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I think makes a real difference, and particularly for women, but it does affect men too, is whether or not you're physically attractive.
Yeah. So controversial, but so true. And I hate saying this, but I've noticed a real trend on what content gets consumed on LinkedIn at the moment. The algorithm seems to be geared towards photos of attractive women sat in office environments with their high heels on, and then the text has nothing to do with the picture, and they seem to get a ton of engagement. And I'm not saying the content's not good, but it's like attention and then read the content. Whereas I think if I put selfies up it probably would have the same impact.
But I mean, the thing is some of it is selfies and some of it is like physically attractive people, again, they've done studies, do better than not. And so that's just luck. So there's fundamental, or you're having to come from, you just have yet another stumbling block that you have to fight over. So it's a combination of all kinds of things. And then, the way my brain works is a way that really works well in tech. Yeah. That's luck.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. And I think one thing that removes the luck element, if individuals, particularly within kind of GTM functions and sales roles, numbers speak for themselves, right? And they might have more challenge of locking down decision makers and booking meetings based on how they look and how they come across. But if you are delivering your numbers and you're a high performer, then you can't really argue with that. But I guess then the next steps of progression, there are limitations, and you might lose out because someone has a similar profile to you, but they look a certain way. They look like a Wall Street person going into a large, PLC or PE-backed type business. Definitely, I'm going to dive into that a little bit more. I want to see the stats for that. If you've got anything on it, anything you can lead me to, I'd love to see that.
And yeah, I've looked at it in the past. I'll have to dig it out. And then the other thing is, like, it's not that, like, in effect, these are all types of privilege. And so it's not that it means that you therefore can't achieve anything. It just means that you have to work even harder.
Yeah.
And be even more impressive. And be confident and articulate and personable and that little bit more. It just means that your life, you have to work that little bit harder than somebody who has been naturally gifted with all of those.
Yeah.
And if we go back to the gender side of things, what I'm looking for, and I'll feel like we know that gender has no longer become an issue when we have as many mediocre women in power as we do men.
Love that.
Because if you, like, so much is down to who is the best candidate.
Yeah.
And we'll go for the best candidate in the role. But the problem is, if you have a mediocre male candidate and a mediocre female candidate, the man will be chosen because of all of the societal norms and expectations. And so if you look at women, senior women, or women who are on the rise, they have to be so much better to be the better candidate.
Yeah.
To get chosen.
Yeah. But I guess the positive there, the more women that step into power, there will be, perhaps and I'm not saying, anyone should ever recruit based on bias, but the more females in power, there will be an understanding of what that individual has had to go through to get to that point of interview. And again, there should never be a bias based on that, but more CEOs in more female CEOs will have that understanding, I guess.
Possibly, but because of internalized misogyny, like we do end up holding women to a higher standard, even as other women.
Right.
And so what we expect, and it's subconscious. We're not saying, oh, that's a woman, and therefore we have a higher bar. It's just a forgiveness.
Yeah.
Of a forgiveness of foibles in men that is not then forgiven in women. And then there's another, again, I'll have to pull out this study, but there's been work multiple times on women receiving feedback at work, and women receive considerably more negative feedback than men. Like, and also something like 75% of feedback women receive is negative.
Really? Right. Wow.
And so you also just have your own, like, it's hard to retain your self-belief when you're just giving a barrage of how you can be better.
Does it feel to you, because obviously you've been in the space for a considerable amount of time and you've worked in a variety of roles, do you think the landscape's improving?
Some of it, yes. Like overt sexual harassment is much better than it was. Like, I no longer have bosses who feel like it's absolutely appropriate to pick me up, as in physically pick me up in a bar,
Right.
which I had at the start of my career. There's not the sexual undercurrent and jokes and just discomfort where you either have to laugh along or be considered prudish or frigid the way it was when I was younger. So that has definitely improved, and much for the better.
Yeah.
But what's ended up happening is a lot of it has become the harder to put your finger on it. So these, that it's not right, but you can't quite tell why. Whereas filthy jokes being told in the office or weird comments about your bottom are obvious and wrong. So it has improved, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. I guess before it was black and white. There's no misinterpretation of what you're saying. That's inappropriate. Now it's, are you being inappropriate? I think you are, but it's, Okay.
Are you being inappropriate, or is the mediocre male candidate getting selected because because he's a good guy and he can golf?
Do you think technology will help remove some of the unconscious bias?
Well, I guess we're in such a backlash right now that it's like, does it even matter if the technology exists? Like, will we use it?
Fair. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I think it's much more around what's the appetite of the time than the technology and whether or not that'll make a difference. And I think actually...
Sorry.
I think one of the things that will make more of a difference is if women... So some of the changes, like in America, that I'm conflicted by, American paternity and maternity leave has changed. Do you know about this?
No. I did see something. Let me see.
So basically, pat leave in America used to be a week or 2 weeks if you were lucky, and maternity leave was 6 weeks standard, and then maybe you could get a little bit more. Large companies now are offering parental leave that's the same amount for men and women.
Okay.
So the reasoning behind that is it means that women aren't penalized or put on the mommy track, because men of childbearing age are just as likely to have babies and take 3 months off work.
Right.
For paternity leave.
Yeah.
As a woman is. So that part I think is good and actually builds in some level of equality into child rearing expectations. The other part of me feels like it's not good because the men aren't actually giving birth, and they don't, I'd much rather, like, women aren't going to get 6 months off in America because men would also then get 6 months off, and that would be too much. But if you're exclusively breastfeeding and you're recovering, 6 months off isn't unreasonable.
Sure.
For a woman.
Well, it's a physical recovery, and that's not even taken into account if you've had a cesarean and all of that stuff. So, yeah, I agree.
So I'm kind of torn between being a woman and the biological realities of that, and ways of a society trying to even out the childcare and burden. But that's what's going to make a difference, is that when women, because women disappear after they have babies, they come back 3 days a week, 4 days a week, their careers massively slow down, their earnings massively slow down. And then also, even if they do go back full time, they do the disproportionate amount of work at home, which means that you just can't be fully in work, do the extra hours, do the golf games, do all of the stuff that is required still to push your career forward. And so changing that in the next generation or two, changing the expectations of what men should be doing at home, and not just having women provide all of the free labor, is what's going to make the difference. It's not just an issue in the workplace, it's an issue out of the workplace.
Yeah. Well, it's statistically, we're not having as many children now either, are we? The younger generation are less interested in having kids. What are your kind of thoughts on that? Do you think that will change the dynamic?
Well, there's all kinds of issues going on. So
I mean, if we zoomed out here.
Because women are becoming more liberal, men are becoming more conservative, women and men are not pairing up. The younger generation aren't having sex at all. Like, they're not dating, they're not having sex.
What's going on?
So, which is, and they're the ones that are coming up. So who knows? Like, social media and the world getting smaller it's fracturing our society in such crazy ways that I really don't know. But then I don't know if this is a piece of good news, but you know how younger people weren't drinking? That appears to have stopped and is completely reversed, and they're drinking again. So
excellent.
I'm like, so it's not necessarily
going back to your 20s of walking around London. Great times.
So it's not necessarily the good news that they're drinking again, but for me, I take it as like good news that maybe our own human nature is going to come back, and people are going to start to have sex again and pair up.
Well, especially if they're drinking.
Be so extreme. Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to be.
We'll have some more babies.
I don't want to be too direct about it, but a lot of mistakes are made when drinking. So, positive mistakes, net positive in the end.
And also just dating and pairing up.
Which seems crazy, because I feel like we live in a hyper-sexualized society at the moment, where OnlyFans is a click away, and it's almost celebrated when you've got, and I won't mention any names, but when a particular female OnlyFans star will sleep with 1,000 men in one day, and that seems to make the news. And I feel, as someone close to 40, I feel like we're in a hyper-sexualized society now. I thought everyone was just on apps, meeting up. It was all about hookups, but the stats say the opposite.
Yeah,
we had to work really hard back in the day for this stuff to happen. We had to go to clubs and awkwardly shimmy towards someone and then use a chat up line, which never worked.
But you're also now afraid to talk to people, and everybody's on their apps to I have a lot of gay friends, and they're on their they're on Grindr to see the person next to them and whether or not that person's on Grindr, and then they connect on Grindr, and then they talk to each other, which I find so strange. But hypersexualized, but that doesn't mean you have to leave your house.
Yeah.
So you can just get live streamed all the content you want, and you don't actually have to meet a person.
It's weird. I saw a really funny video actually on, I think it was just like a YouTube short or something, where a father got his daughter to go through the notions of knocking for her friend to come out. So he was like, look, he filmed it, so I just want you to knock on the door and pretend I'm your friend and we're going to go out. So she walks to the door, and they take about 7 cuts. She knocks on the door and just stands there and doesn't say anything. He opens it. He goes, hello? He's like, you're supposed to say something. I don't know who you are. I don't know you're here to see the kid. Try it again. Shuts the door, and he does this multiple times, and it's just, it's hilarious. I'll send it to you if you ever care to watch it. But it's just, it's funny, but it's also, no, that's real, because I've got a niece and nephew. I've got 2 nephews actually, but my eldest nephew is 15, so year 11 now, really growing up, and he is a lovely human, but my God, his communication skills are dreadful when he's not on his PC speaking to his mates on online games. I took him to a track day, and I think back to being young and being able to drive a car. He was 15, he got to drive a Porsche, and the guy said, "Are you excited?" And he went, yeah. And the guy
That's
said,
also just being 15.
the guy said, "Does he play games?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "He's a gamer. I get it."
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah," but I think back to when I was younger. Maybe it's just because of what I was exposed to. My mum was very like social. Her friends would come around a lot. I'd speak to them, and I'd stand in the kitchen while she'd have a cigarette by the cooker, trying to use the extractor to pretend she didn't smoke. And I just loved being there talking, and I feel like the art of conversation is definitely being lost because we're so digital now, and it's so easy to send someone a quick message. And the thought of not being able to go and knock for your friends and be like, let's go down the cage for a game of football, or let's go and roll around the cornfields, or let's go and steal strawberries from the farmer, that's all gone now.
Or they just organize it on
Yeah.
on their mobile and then show up in the cornfield, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, you like to think so. But how did we
I
even
don't
meet
know.
up when we were younger?
Well, and also we were okay if we were 10 to 15 to 20 minutes late. You just waited and hoped for the best.
Well, because if you didn't have a watch, you didn't have a phone in your pocket, so you didn't really know what the time was anyway, unless you asked a stranger if they had a watch, and everything was different.
I think we just waited. We just had a lot more patience for assuming that somebody would show up.
Yeah. We've kind of massively sidetracked from your incredible
we
journey.
have.
But I love it. So, NewVoiceMedia, let's go back. So that kind of launched your career. That really got things got things moving. I became kind of aware of you during Peak, and I knew who you were before you were at the customer conference, because I think we prospected Peak, or we certainly spoke to some candidates, because there was a I think it's fair to say, and we don't have to talk about this, but there was definitely a period within Peak of real kind of transformation, like certainly changing the CS function. I know the roles changed dramatically.
Yeah.
You were a massive part of that, and the business performance dramatically improved as well. So talk to me about Peak a little bit, and how your career kind of flew through there, and also your views on kind of CS there, and something, if you can.
Why don't we talk about CS rather than specifically CS at Peak?
Fine.
So, and this is going back to the chat that you saw me on, or the panel.
Yeah.
So I feel as though that CS has had its day. It didn't exist, and then in SaaS it started to exist. I'm not sure really when it maybe really took off. 2015. Kind of try and.
I think the COVID rebound is where it went ballistic.
Really great, right?
Yeah, because I think companies, they were like, oh my God, we really need to double down on retaining our customers here, because we're struggling to onboard anything new. So how do we do that? We need more CS talent. And that's where the CS talent pool shrunk massively, but there were tons of jobs. So that then kind of rebounded salary expectations. Candidates took control. A 50k CSM was getting 80k, 90k, 100k, and they're managing in a 1.1 million book of business. It's, the maths didn't math back then, and then we saw that massive kind of layoff and decline. Not to do the history of CS, but I think definitely post COVID was almost, we know what CS is beforehand, we're hiring for it, we'll put some focus on it, but then COVID hit. We really need this now, and it just kind of exploded from there.
But as a discipline or as a function, it's a new one. And I'm trying to think, Salesforce probably put it in around 2010. Gainsight took off around 2012, 2015.
Yeah.
And then it exploded after COVID. But then every company exploded after COVID with all the money that was sloshing around. And it ended up taking all of these different skills and mushing it together fundamentally to stop churn, because SaaS businesses don't work if there's churn.
Yeah.
But really, if you take a step back, like that's onboarding. And also another thing is because SaaS businesses don't want a lot of services, and they, because it's better to have lots of recurring revenue than it is to have services.
Yeah.
You're also in effect using CS to deliver services covertly and not letting anybody know. So you have onboarding and implementation, you have upsell, renewal, retention and upsell, so the commercial element. You also have a lot of times actual being a better interface, like UX, than the product, or the product can't do things, they haven't built the product out yet. I like the sticking plaster. And then also first level support, because customers hate doing tickets, writing,
chatbots,
putting a ticket in. And so, or also just the effort of it. So if you can email your CSM rather than having to go through raising a ticket, you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And so you have these 4 elements plus like voice of the customer all rolled into this. And it was cheaper to keep hiring CS than it is to lose some of your recurring revenue to actual services and to fix your product. And then cash stopped being free and you need to look at it differently. And that's part of where CS became an issue. And the renewal and retention piece was just account managers. And for whatever reason, it's like we took account managers and we gave them a bunch of other jobs. And so my preference now is to have account managers who are actually called account managers and they're responsible. And it's so nice to have an account manager who is not afraid to talk about money and not afraid to do deals and close business, because otherwise, and it's also much better for customers rather than customers having to deal with the CS. The CS isn't very commercial, doesn't like having the tough conversations, wants to please a customer, and then you bring sales back in. Yes,
it's a lot of hoops for a customer to jump through as well. So the user experience becomes fragmented because and look, I'm obviously a huge advocate for customer success, but less so the role and the function, and more so it's what every business is working towards. So really, it's what roles do you need to deliver successful outcomes for your customers using the product? Otherwise, they're not going to stick. So if you tell me you need an account manager, it's like, we'll get you an account manager. We're not going to start telling you, well, you need someone that can do the onboarding, do the upsell. And you're right. I think a lot of CS professionals do step away from the commercial element, and you can see that in their CVs. And when you ask questions around, okay, well, I understand what you're doing because that's documented. That's great. I can see that in your CV, but what's the impact of what you're doing? And a lot of individuals can't deliver that, and that's where I think, that's your delivery. I think
I don't know. I try and turn off all of my alarms, and somehow that one's turned on.
That's not your delivery.
No, that's just some alarm on my computer. I try and turn them all off, and no matter what I do, they still keep coming.
Or it's just such a great point made. The computer was like, yep, great. But I think that's one of the challenges, and that's not to throw shade at individuals, because you perform the role that you're given within an organization, and if they're not giving you clear targets, if you haven't got a revenue-centric leader and it is all about CSAT scores and kind of the fluffier customer metrics, then that's really what you become, right? But I agree, it's fragmented, and that's why even as a business we are positioned as more GTM focused, because actually what problem are we trying to solve that's going to drive revenue, not just fill the role of CSM, because otherwise I don't think we would have a business based on the last couple of years, and also we want people to go into positions where they're retained and the job is safe based on their performance, not based on necessarily the external market factors. Like you mentioned, money, whatever year it was now, it was 2023, like money became really expensive. You just couldn't get funding. So VCs were like, we're not investing in that anymore. And actually the money you've got from Series A like funding, that's the money you've got now. So make it last and build runway. And what are you going to invest in? Is it going to be lots of new product features, etc.? Probably not. Is it going to be, more people to look after customers? Probably not. It's sales and marketing. We need more customers. So it's been quite interesting. So where do you think CS sits in 18 months' time? Or is that too soon?
I think it moves back to all the different functions that were mushed into CS. So account managers, we already see that really clearly. Onboarding, actual onboarding. Being the user interface is the one that I think is going to go away. Or at least I really hope with AI it's going to go away, because we can make much better user interfaces than we used to. And your point around, is it going to be more features in terms of where the money goes? Maybe not more features, but more usability, and actually making a product that means the gross margin is good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big believer that CSAT is a KPI for the product team, not the CS team.
Yeah.
The product team has to own our customers happy, and the product team has to own our customers churning. And I think AI enables that.
Yeah.
Obviously, go-to-market also owns our customers churning, in terms of like, let's renew our customers.
Sure.
Let's make sure that they're not being ignored. But fundamentally, if it's a shit product, that's your churn issue.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think AI's, and you kind of answered it, and I don't want to go too into the AI rabbit hole, because it's, there's a lot of conversations about it, but how do you think it's going to impact SaaS businesses overall moving forward?
Well, so there's both using AI internally, and there's embedding AI in your product.
Yeah.
And it's the embedding AI in your product part that matters a lot more. I mean, I'm a big fan of both, but in terms of what's going to make the biggest difference is an easy to use, super smart product.
Yeah.
And AI native businesses have an advantage to SaaS businesses who are throwing a chatbot in.
Yeah.
Because what we don't want is a SaaS business with a chatbot. We want fundamentally easy to use smart products.
Yeah.
That are powered by AI. And if you have an easy to use smart product powered by AI, you don't need a CSM saying, here, let me make this dashboard for you. You need somebody who can do implementation, show you how to use it, make sure that your goals are outlined and it's set up to achieve your goals. But then CS steps away.
Yeah. So I guess it depends on the type of business, I guess. But when we're talking onboarding, implementation, and then we're talking kind of like growth and expansion, sometimes if the role's quite technical, if the product's quite technical, the roles become very separate, I think. And you've then got implementation, onboarding, and then cut it down, then you've got an account management position, or are you saying the two would kind of merge as one? Because I know CS is kind of expected to do a bit of everything, but...
Two roles. So you have your commercial account manager role, and then you have implementation and onboarding, which is finite.
Yeah.
So you're not aligned to a customer forever. You're aligned for a customer until they're live, and then you step away.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be any new role formation? Because
I'm sure. I don't know what it is, but yeah. Well, so actually, on our podcast, we interviewed somebody who has gotten rid of or relabeled CRO and CMO as go-to-market engineers.
Okay.
And so what they're looking at is how they're embedding AI and the systems within those functions, using embedded real-time coaching for the salespeople. So sales managers aren't doing coaching. AI is doing coaching.
Wow.
Sales managers are thinking about the vibes and building these systems.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it could be totally different in the future. And they're getting really good results from that.
Well, you've got to think about the advancements we've had in the last 18 months, from log on to something, do some kind of prompts, get a response back. Oh, wow, this is incredible. To it's really accelerating businesses. And I don't know how the funding's going to progress, because we've got in the US, we've got, I think Jerome Powell's looking at, so the head of the Fed is looking at rate cuts, which I think they've got like a 98% probability to happen in October. But it feels a little bit like, I think they're talking about 50 basis points rate cuts, but I think it's kicking the can down the road a little bit. from a economy perspective, and then how that's gonna, because that will free up, that will increase liquidity for the marketplace globally because everyone follows the US. But then I feel like because we're top of the market for stocks and everything at the moment as well. I'm kind of thinking, is the money going to be there after, Q1 of next year, or are we going to enter a Titan phase again? I don't want to predict it. I kind of feel like we might have a constricted phase again instead of growth.
Yeah. And the tariffs are going to have to, it's like we have the tariffs on one side and we have AI boom on the other side. And they're like, which one's going to win?
Yeah.
Which one's going to come on top?
Yeah. So interesting. It's a slightly strange question, but if you could go back to that person in their 20s, knowing everything you know now, and you could just sit down and have a conversation with them, what would you say?
I don't know, because part of me is like, it's okay, it'll all be all right. And the other part of me is like, just go back to America.
Oh, I wonder if you had, where would you be today? I'm sure you still would have done incredibly well.
But just in a different way. Yeah. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm grateful to have lived in the UK. I've really enjoyed it. But there's also a lot of stuff, like there's a lot of reason why people move to the US, and I've done it the other way. Yeah.
I'm still working out the reasons.
It would have been a very different life.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. I'm genuinely not sure which way I would tell myself.
Yeah.
I think I might actually say, just because I'm a risk taker and why not roll the dice, go back to America, and then genuinely curious of what would have happened that way.
Yeah. Be great. Do you know what? Here's a prediction from me. I reckon you'll be able to AI model that in 5 years' time. You'll be able to kind of map your life out, and it'll tell you where you'd end up, which would be interesting. Awesome. I'm conscious of time more for you. Are you okay?
I think I have a meeting now. I think that's what the alarm was.
Fine. Oh, the time's different on there. Okay, that's fine. Well,
yeah, I do.
Cool. Okay. I could carry on chatting to you for ages because it's really fascinating, and hopefully it's been a good experience for yourself as well. And
I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, Luke. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And honestly, I think some of the points around, I didn't think we'd get as deep into it, but there's some really valuable parts here. Your perspective and talking through kind of the gender differences. I think there's a lot of people take value from that, and I'd love to have another follow-up conversation with you when you have some like clear diary space, and again, just do the same format, just have a chat.
Yeah, let's do it.
Or I can jump on yours and ask you questions, whatever works for you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Luke.